Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KS USA. Today we're going to talk about how to service your LEV-Carbon or LEV-C seat post. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about some of the tools you're going to need. One of the tools you're going to need is a soft jaw for your vise. You can either get these at some hardware stores. You'll probably find a V-groove block, which will work, and those are adjustable for different diameters. If you're not able to find the soft jaws, the other thing you can do is clamp the seat post in your work stand, bike stand. And what I'd recommend if you're going to do that is to wrap some scrap inner tube around the mast first and then clamp it. That's going to give you a better grip, and it's going to avoid you over torquing the clamp and doing some damage to the post. In our case, we've got the soft jaws here, so we're going to go ahead and use those. So our first step is going to be to go ahead and clamp this down. Now again, be really careful because this is a carbon mast. It's really lightweight, and it's very torque sensitive, so you don't want to over torque it. Get it tight so it won't slip, but don't over torque it where you're going to do some damage. Next tool you're going to want to have is a strap wrench, but basically it's just a wrench that's designed to assemble plumbing pipe. And so it's a rubber surface, it's not going to damage the parts, and the one thing you want to do make sure of is that the stuff's clean before you do it. If there's oil or grease or anything on there, the rubber doesn't grip as well. So you want to do that, and we're going to go ahead and use a strap wrench to break this loose. And just simply give it a turn. Once you've got it broken loose, you can do the rest by hand. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove the end cap and set that aside. Our next step is going to be to depress the actuator. You want to kind of churn this barrel counterclockwise, and what that's going to do is that'll let the cable get past the hook on the actuator and let that come out. So now we can go ahead and just fold that cable back out of the way. You're going to pull the assembly out. You're going to get an actuator assembly. There's a pushrod piston, and then there's your pushrod. Okay, now we'll go ahead and turn this around in the clamp so you can see this other end. Okay, now our next step is going to be to loosen the seal collar. Again, give that a good wipe down, make sure it's clean. You might be able to loosen this by hand, and if so, go ahead and turn it. If not, get your strap wrench out. What you want to watch is be careful, because sometimes the strap wrench has these metal parts, and if you get those up against your housing here, you can scratch or damage it. So just make sure when you're slipping this on that you're away from the housing, and give it a turn, break it loose. Okay, now at this point, a lot of times there's a lot of dirt or debris collected at the top. Take a couple seconds and wipe that off with a microfiber towel. That's going to prevent all that stuff from getting down inside, and it's just going to be that much less that you're going to have to clean up when you take it apart. Okay, now our last step is down inside here. There's an 8mm nut, and so what you're going to need is an extension, an 8mm socket, and a ratchet handle. And this is, you can take the cable here and just pull it with your thumb, and that's going to hold it out of the way. It's going to go down inside, and it's probably not going to be super tight. It's probably going to be about a quarter turn past hand tight, so it should be pretty easy to remove. Once it's loose, you'll take it out, and that's what it looks like. And that's a hollow bolt. So when you go to reassemble this, you got to be careful with it. But we're going to clean this stuff all up. Next step is going to be to completely unthread the collar. Okay, now sometimes you can pull these by hand and they'll pop out like this. Other times this might be a little tight. It might be a little tight and not want to come out. It's important not to pull it to where the inner bushing surface starts to pull out, because if you do that, you're going to damage your DU bushing. So if you pull it a couple quick tugs and you can't get it to move and it starts to move that inner bushing surface, stop, get a dead blow hammer, and a flat head screwdriver. You want to just catch the edge of the bushing, give it a little tap, and that'll knock it loose. That way you're not going to do any damage to your bushing. And then go ahead and pull this out. You want to keep your hands under it because these 3 guide bushings will come off easily. You don't want to lose those. Okay, now your next step is going to be, if you just take a utility knife, you can catch the edge of these and they'll come right out. So we're going to take those off and we're going to set those aside. Okay, now we're going to check the DU bushing. The DU bushing should slide easily, but there shouldn't be a lot of play there. If you feel any play, or if it's really tight, this would be a good time to replace your DU bushing. You can get those from your local dealer, and dealers, if you're looking for them, you can get them through your distributors where you get your KS product. In our case, it's in good shape, so we're going to go ahead and set it aside to clean it. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and pull off the seal collar. Now again, we use a little bit of degreaser. Going to clean the seal carrier, the threads, the inside of the seal, get any dirt or debris out of there. Now what we're going to look for on the seal is we want to make sure that you've got a good, clean, kind of a sharp edge to the rubber. And there's an inner and outer seal lip. You want to make sure those are still intact and in good shape. If you see any cracks or any damage to that, it's a good time to replace it now. This comes out pretty easy. You're just going to use your finger and pop it out. The new one pops back in place. In our case, these are in really good shape, so we're going to go ahead and reuse them. So next step is to go ahead and lube the seal. We're going to use KS post paste. If you can't find post paste through your local dealer, you can also use slick honey. So either one of those are great to use. Avoid using lithium-based products. Avoid using the thicker greases, you know, like marine lube, that kind of thing. They just don't work really well with the sliding products. The best thing for you to do is to use the slick honey or post paste. You're going to get the best performance out of your product by doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to load the cavity in the seal up with some grease. And so just by putting a little on your finger, go ahead and work that into that groove. And there's an inner and outer lip, and there's a void in between those two. That's what we're filling up with grease. So do that, wipe off the excess. Go ahead and set that aside. Now what we'll do is, let's go ahead and, while we've got this apart, we'll take this head off of the cartridge and we'll just wipe this down. We're going to do the same thing with the lower perch here, clean it good. Sometimes mud and water has a tendency to want to work its way up in there. When you disassemble it and then reassemble it, some of that dirt can get in between these interfaces and cause creaking and that kind of thing. So it's good insurance to take a couple extra seconds to clean that. Go ahead and slide it back on. And take our seal collar and seal and slide it in place. Now we're going to go ahead and clean the DU bushing. Just need to wipe it down, make sure there's no debris or contamination on it. And now we checked it for play and we checked it for smoothness earlier when we checked it against the stanchion. Now we want to look inside and make sure that the surface is still good. If there's any deep gouges or damage that's visible, again, go ahead and replace it. It's a drop-in unit, so you don't have to do any sizing or anything to it afterwards, so it's really easy to install without special tools. In our case, it's in good shape, so we're going to go ahead and slide it on. And our next step is going to be to reinstall those lower guide bushings, and what we want to do is just put a little bit of grease inside the grooves that are in the stanchion. Take the guide bushing, drop it in, and push it in. Okay, so we got that assembly all together. We're going to set it aside for now. Okay, now inside the mast, you notice that there's no bottom out bumper here on the shaft. That actually is still inside the mast, so we're going to go ahead and gently try to tap that. Okay, so our bottom out bumper, was sitting inside there. We went ahead and tapped that and got it out. And so we're going to go ahead and just put that on the cartridge shaft and let that sit. We'll set that aside. Okay, now our next step is we're going to go ahead and clean the roller bearing inside. And again, we'll take a little bit of our degreaser. We're going to clean inside, and what we want to do is kind of work back and forth as we work our way around. You can see it's taken off the dirt and debris in there. And what we want to do is cause the rollers to roll back and forth so we can get all the dirt and grit out of them. Okay, and then our next step is to go ahead and take a flat screwdriver, or if you've got just basically anything, a socket extension, or if you don't have that, a piece of a coat hanger or a spoke if you're a shop, and just you want to just basically get the microfiber towel down in there and push it in, clean that out, and that's going to clean out the raceways down inside. And so then you just want to kind of give it a look down inside, make sure everything's clean, that you don't see any debris in there. And you're going to want to make sure that the link cable is lined up. There's some raceways down inside, and it's really important that this cable runs in those raceways. And if it doesn't, when the stanchion slides down through there, there's a chance that it can get caught on that line and either damage it or cause a malfunction of the system. So just make sure that you're keeping that where it belongs. We're going to go ahead and grease this bearing, and the way we're going to do that is just push the grease in. What we're trying to do is we're trying to push the grease in so that it goes in one side of the roller and squirts out the other, and that way we know the roller is completely full, or the bearing is completely full of grease. So you're going to work our way all the way around, kind of take your time, make sure you get enough lube in there. And there's a pulley here at the top, and we want to take a little dollop of grease and push that in, and you're going to see it kind of start to squeeze out on the other side of the coupler housing, and that's going to lube that up real good and make sure that that roller is functioning properly and has enough lube. Okay, now that we've got that lubed up, we're going to go ahead and just put it back in the clamp here to hold it. Now we're going to go ahead and put this back in, and what we want to focus on is holding these 3 bushings in place with 3 fingers. There's 3 slots in that roller bearing that correspond to these 3 lower guide bushings. What I like to do is I like to set it up so that these are just slightly to the right of those slots, push it in, and then I turn it slowly counterclockwise until you can see it there dropped in. Once I get it about halfway where those will stay in place, then it's a good idea to come back over and pull your cable out of the way, pull it taut, make sure it's inside the raceway, and then with your 3 fingers, go ahead and hold those and just gently kind of rock it and work it till they go all the way in. Now you're going to feel it bottom out there, and you know that that's basically hit the stopper inside. This will take just a little bit of finesse, because you're going to need to send this down the shaft and get that threaded into the end of that cartridge shaft. And so you're going to kind of look down inside. You can see it. Once it's in there and starts to touch, go ahead and hold it with your hand on this end so it doesn't slip. Get the ratchet going the right way. We'll go ahead and just turn this easy by hand until we feel it just stop, which that just stopped. Now we're going to turn a quarter turn past that, and that's it. You don't want to over torque this like we talked about earlier. That's a hollow alloy bolt, and if you over torque that, it will shear off. So be really careful. Just a quarter turn past hand tight is what you want. We'll go ahead and reassemble the rest of this system. So if you look at the shaft here, there's one side with a small diameter end and one side with a large diameter end. What we're going to do is put a little grease here, put a little grease on the shaft itself. The large diameter goes in first, and we're going to sight down there, and you'll see the hole in the middle of that bolt that you just put in. This is going to slide into it. Then you're going to take the piston and slide that on the small end of the cap. You take a little bit of grease, put that dab of grease on there. Then we're going to go ahead and set the actuator assembly in place, and this, on this particular model, is held in just by the pressure of the end cap, so that we don't have to thread this in. But what we do need to do is compress this. You need to hold it down with this finger so it doesn't pop out. Push down with the other finger in the middle of the actuator. And then, like we talked about, you have to kind of turn the barrel so you get that cable to go around this little point here, this little hook. Once you get it pushed in past there, go ahead and rotate it back again, and now it's between the 2 points, so the cable is in the middle of the two. Now it's locked in, which last thing you want to make sure of is, you can see this has a detent where it locks in. If you look at where the coupler housing is here and look sight straight down, that's where the cable's going to go. If you rotated this one way or the other, you could cause the cable not to line up properly and cause a malfunction in the system. The last thing you want to do is make sure that your cable is properly seated on the roller. The roller has a groove like this, and you want the cable to fit into it, not on either side of it. So it has to be in the middle of that little V groove that's there. Once that's all set up, we're going to take our end cap, check inside, make sure there's no water or debris in there. You don't want to put that back together dirty. Clean it out really good with the microfiber towel. And the last thing, be really careful. These are fine threads and they're aluminum. You don't want to cross thread it, so just go slowly. Do it by hand. Get it hand tight. We'll stop. Go ahead and wipe it down. You want to get rid of any excess grease. And take our strap wrench and just go a quarter turn past hand tight. That's enough. You don't want to over torque it. Remember, this is carbon. We don't want to do damage there. We'll go ahead and slide our seal collar down. We'll thread it down by hand. Use our rag and wipe off any excess grease. Final step is to use our strap wrench. And again, your coupler housing is here. The strap wrench has the metal parts here, so be careful. Once it's hand tight, go a quarter turn and stop. But be really careful of these metal parts that they don't come into contact with your coupler housing and scratch or damage it. Once that's tight, the post is ready to reinstall on your bike.